Former CIA Director John Brennan issued fresh criticism of the president Friday night after the president revoked Brennan's security clearance earlier this week.
The fact that he's using a security clearance of a former CIA director as a pawn in his public relations strategy, I think, is just so reflective of somebody who, quite frankly, don't want to use this term maybe, but he's drunk on power.
By Saturday morning, the president tweeted another rebuke of Brennan, calling him the worst CIA director in history and a, quote, loudmouth, partisan political hack who cannot be trusted with the secrets to our country. For more on this feud, we have Molly Hooper in our Washington bureau. She's a CBSN political contributor and congressional reporter for The Hill. Wow.
Wow is right.
Cannot be trusted with our nation's secrets. Worst CIA director in history. Senators, congressmen returning from break, not easing into things. They're faced with this conflict right away. How are they reacting?
Well, it sort of depends on who you're talking to. Democrats are largely decrying this decision and saying that it's, stifling freedom of speech. It sets a dangerous precedent for other intelligence officials and current intelligence officials who fear that, if they tell the truth to this president or they tell him things that he won't like, that the president will revoke their security clearance. That said, Republicans, on the other hand, are saying it's the right decision to make. Brennan has been speaking out against his president and saying particularly poisonous things, as Lindsey Graham said, and it probably should have been done a long time ago. Because when you're a retired intelligence official, it's not necessarily your right to keep security clearance. It's a privilege. And, a lot of these guys who do keep their security clearance, they go on and they work for private firms. They become contractors. They work with the government. And they become it's a very lucrative thing to have a security clearance once you've left the government. Yeah. That said, there are Republicans like Susan Collins of Maine who agree with Democrats, saying that this is the wrong decision. It's not a wise one to make at this time, and they caution that it could again cause problems in the future for current intelligence officials.
It's a privilege. It's not a right to have that security clearance. It can be helpful, some people have argued, if current members of the intelligence community want to call on a predecessor and say, hey, we're facing a situation. I think it's a bit like what you faced. Here's what's going on.
Yes. That
opportunity is now closed if anyone wants to call Brennan. Now, yes. There is a connection here, I think, in many people's minds between the special counsel and the president's revoking of security clearances. And that connection is this. The president enjoys acting unilaterally where he can, where his powers lie. He has the right to revoke security clearances. He also, as he's said repeatedly, could fire the special counsel. That raises the question of whether Congress should take action to protect the special counsel. Any movement on that front?
Well, in this town, they do a lot better reacting than, preventing issues. I mean, this is a very reactive town, and Capitol Hill is a reactive place. Trying to get them to do prehab, so to speak, to prevent future injuries, for a sports metaphor, is not something they're very good at doing. So, they're speaking. When you hear the members like Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham and outspoken Republicans who do carry a lot of sway on issues that relate to the special counsel and judiciary, it would be hard-pressed for the president to actually fire Rod Rosenstein, who would be the one who makes the decision to whether or not to fire the special prosecutor.
Moving on now from tweet to shining tweet, the president also said on Saturday that social media is discriminating against Republican voices. No particular example there, but the timing makes some people wonder if he's referring to Alex Jones, the InfoWars founder, who has been recently booted off of Apple, Facebook. He was suspended from Twitter. Any movement to take on this alleged bias in social media?
Oh, my gosh. And how? There actually has been action to take on this alleged bias. We've had hearings up before the House Judiciary Committee. Witnesses like Diamond and Silk, the conservative African-American duo, big Trump supporters, they spoke before the Judiciary Committee. Republicans, again, they largely decried what they see as, reining in of free speech. Democrats calling it a farce. Because, when it comes down to it, these are private companies. And the one problem that Republicans have with that is that they don't like intervening in business, in companies. They don't want to disrupt business, but on the other hand, they're torn because these businesses are effectively taking away their ability to speak out on a social media platform. So it's something that the House is dealing with. House Energy and Commerce, Greg Walden is working on this, as well as members of the Commerce Committee on the Senate side. But at this point, I haven't seen any legislation coming forward. Still, they are looking into it and figuring out how can we navigate this challenge when you have social media outlets that are almost like a utility because everybody uses them. They're so big, and it's kind of interesting that all this is happening when, on the day after a bunch of news organizations got together to call on the president to quit stifling the press, the freedom of the press. So there's a lot going on Capitol Hill, even though it's August.
What you say about social media platforms being like a utility, it's a point well taken. Getting kicked off one of these platforms is not like being kicked out of a particular bar or restaurant. You can just go to another one down the street and find new people that you can berate. It is a public sphere at this point. So I think many more questions raised. Perhaps Congress will get to them in a prehab sort of way, but probably not. Moving on to another. They're foam
rolling out their injuries, so to speak. Their legislative issues.
They're very slowly, and they're working on it. The president canceled a planned military parade. This was going to be a big guns and ammo walk down a major thoroughfare in D.C. It was going to cost apparently $92 million. Is it a good thing, really a sigh of relief on the Republican side that this has been canceled? Because that's a pretty big sum. And I know some veterans groups were saying, look, we'll take that money.
Well, exactly. And, I heard General Mattis speaking out about this the other day, saying he hasn't heard that number quoted. But keep in mind that it's not just the actual parade of veterans and current military folks walking down Pennsylvania Avenue. It's also the protesters, counter-protesters, and the police presence that would need to be present in D.C. One of the reasons why it would cost so much. And so, yes, when this idea came up in, when was it? Earlier this year, the president posited having a military parade, which, ostensibly seems like, that's what a parade is. It's marching your troops down so that everybody can see them. That said, Republicans who are trying to win re-election this year and are already ballooning the deficit, the last thing they need is to spend a lot of money at a time when they're trying to get reelected.
All right. One more topic for you before we let you go on this Saturday. Democratic congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's part of the wonderkin who defeated a longstanding Democrat here in New York, is now defending herself after banning press from a public town hall this week. She said she did so that her constituents could speak freely. Now, as you know, on Capitol Hill, there are reporters like yourself around every corner. Is she in for a rude awakening when if she's elected and as she moves forward here? Is sort of the honeymoon period of celebrating her rise over and the kind of hard questions beginning?
Well, I think the hard questions started even before this, when you have members of the Democratic caucus questioning her potential helpfulness to the caucus as she's going out and campaigning against incumbent Democratic members of Congress. And so I think she's in for a rude awakening when it comes to dealing with the press. And also the fact that, okay, this is a public event. You're inviting members of the public. Does that mean they get to check their cell phones at the door? Are they checking their cameras at the door? Because you have citizen journalists who may be able to, maybe in that room, and they can live tweet the event or live stream the event. So, yes, she's going to be greeted with quite a few questions, and I know people are going to be wanting to talk to her when she votes and heads out of the the House chamber. And she can say no comment, and that's fine, but she might be having to say a lot of no comments.
And also, I think perhaps define democratic socialist again and again and again.
Exactly.
All right,
Molly.
What
is that again?
Yeah, well, when you see her, ask her for me.
Sure, I will. See what she says.
Molly Hooper for us in Washington. Molly, thank you very much.
Thank you.